Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. October 10th, outside Naruto's apartment. Fear. Fear is what Naruto Uzumaki is feeling right now. His heart pounding, sweat pouring down his face as he runs as fast as his body will take him. Bruises cover his body and he has deep wounds that are bleeding heavily. His clothes torn and burnt. The gift Ayame and her father gave him held tightly to his chest as he gets closer and closer to his destination. He looks back at the angry mob behind him. They're holding pitchforks, torches and whatever they could get their hands on. One villager threw a rock at the blonde and struck him on his forehead. He cried out in pain as he fell to the ground, clutching his forehead as fresh blood streamed down his head going toward his mouth. He tasted the blood that ran into his mouth before spitting it out. He tried to get up and run away again, but someone grabbed his blonde hair before slamming his face into the ground. He cried out once again in pain before reaching out to grab someone. He gripped a woman's pant leg and looked her in the eyes before saying, Please help me," Naruto choked out before he was slapped across his face. The mob cheered as he struck again and again by the woman. Her pink hair beginning thrown around as she struck the boy harder and harder. Naruto's face felt numb and his left eye began to close then swell up. The woman stopped before kicking the boy in his stomach. "You do not get to plead or talk to me, demon. You killed my husband, left my daughter without a father," she yelled as she stopped her kicks. Naruto coughed out blood as he held his stomach. "I never killed anyone, let alone this lady's husband," Naruto thought. He slowly began to stand and face the crowd. They all had scowls on their faces as they advanced toward him. Naruto back against the wall as he started to breathe heavily as the mob got closer and closer to Naruto. He closed his eyes as fresh tear streamed down his face. "Look, the demon is crying," one villager shouted. "Good, let him cry, in fact," another one said before grabbing a metal pipe that had a jagged end. He advanced the young Uzumaki before he pulled the pipe back before plunging it deep in the boy's shoulder. Naruto thrashed in pain as he tried to scream, but the man held his hand over Naruto's mouth. Naruto's vision began to get blurry and he could feel himself getting weaker. As his eyes began to close, before he opened them widely as the pipe was ripped out of his shoulder, the pain waking Naruto up. He then stabbed the pipe in Naruto's leg, twisting it as he repeated the process on the other leg. Naruto could barely think as the pain grew stronger and stronger. The other villagers followed and began to beat Naruto to death. They punched, kicked, stabbed, slashed, burned and even branded the poor boy. When they were finished, they threw him against the wall. He was breathing even heavier than before, if that is even possible. His blonde bangs that now had blood in it shadowed his eyes so they could not see the tears. The branding mark over his heart felt like it was still on fire. "Maybe it's because they poured salt into the wound after they branded me," Naruto thought as he tried with all his might to stand up. But as he soon realized, his legs were broken, his right arm dislocated and his left shoulder had a tennis ball-sized hole in it. "Is this it? Is this how I die? By people who I wanted to protect when I grew up," Naruto thought. The sound of gravel crunching brought the blonde's attention to the man standing in front of him. Naruto brought his head up slowly to see a man with white hair that seemed to defy gravity. He was wearing the standard Anbu gear and had a wolf mask with red markings. Naruto looked deep in his eyes and saw that one was gray while the other was a bright red and had 3 spinning tomos. Even thought Naruto couldn't see the man's face, he knew that was angry at him just like the rest of them. The white-haired man lifted up his left hand before electricity came out of nowhere surrounding his hand. "This is for my sensei, you demon brat," he said before pulling his hand back. "Chidori," he shouted before plunging his hand into Naruto's chest. Naruto felt the electricity flow through his body as it numbed his body. He felt his heartbeat slow down as his eyes grew heavier and heavier. Naruto slumped against the wall dead. The white hair Anbu yanked his hand out of his chest before he turned to the crowd. "The demon is dead, but you all need to get out of here before the Anbu get here," he said as he began to wipe his hand off on Naruto's jacket. The crowd cheered before they left to go to their homes and celebrate the death of the demon. They were all gone but two people, the pink-hair woman and the white-hair man. They smiled at each other before she grabbed his hand and told him, "Thank you Kakashi for getting rid of that demon and freeing my husband's soul, and maybe now I can move on," she said before walking with the Anbu away from the dead boy. "It was my pleasure, Council Member Haruno, and now my sensei can rest in peace knowing that the demon was dealt with," Kakashi said before he turned toward her. "Kakashi, would you like to join me during the festival, and please call me Sakuno," she said before grabbing Kakashi's arm and dragging him to the festival. The two of them had a great time at the festival, as did the other members of the mob that attacked Naruto. "Okay then Sakuno-chan," Kakashi said. Sakuno blushed as she led him through to a disc-tossing game. They all enjoyed themselves and drank until the pass out, knowing that the demon was dead. Or so they thought. Inside of Konohagakure, on top of a mountain stood a man with long white hair. His hair seemed to flow in the wind as he looked down at the village. He had two blue streaks across his face and his eyes shined amber. The moon illuminated what he was wearing. He wore a white kimono and hakama, armored boots, and a long flowing sash, with the latter two suggestive of Chinese, also share similar, with a spiked rim, with the addition of Chinese vambraces and armored gauntlets, as well as layered spiked pauldron on each shoulder. He wears a parted pelt that extends from both shoulders and trails behind him as he walks, representing the two streaks of fur running down the back of his yokai form. His white hair is only seen in a very high ponytail. The tessaiga and tenseiga are worn at his waist, while the soanga is worn across. His man turned his head toward Naruto's apartment as the smell of blood hit his nostrils. He smirked before he leapt off of the mountain that had 4 faces carved into it before he vanished toward the source of the smell. He appeared before a boy that looked like he has been tortured. He brought 2 fingers up to his neck and he barely felt a pulse. He lifted the boy up by his hair and gasped when he saw the whisker marks on the boy's face. He then scowled and let go of the boy's hair. Doing some quick hand symbols, he fell next to the boy unconscious. In Naruto's mindscape, the raw smell of a sewer was what was waiting for the man as he woke up. He looked around before he heard 2 voices. He began to walk toward the voices in hope he would find what he was looking for. As he walked closer to the noise, he noticed that there were pipes that grew larger as he walked deeper in. The voices kept getting louder and louder until he was in front of a blonde boy and a giant gate with a seal on it. He scowled when he realized what the seal did for the boy. He walked up to the boy and placed his hand on his shoulder. The flinched under his touch and put his hands up to defend himself. "Please don't hurt me, I don't know what I did," the blonde pleaded with the white-haired man. "What is your name, boy?" My name. Yes, your name. Naruto. Uzumaki," the blonde said before straightening his back, puffing his chest out and pointing his thumb at his chest, "and I am going to be the next Hokage, believe it." "And Uzumaki, huh, then I guess you and I are related," the white-haired man said as the boy's eyes widened. "I have a living relative, I can finally have a family," Naruto thought as tears built up in his eyes. He rushed to the man, grabbing his cloth as he cried into his robes. "Stop crying, and do you know what is behind this gate?" the man said as he looked down at Naruto. Naruto shook his head as he was trying to figure it out himself. "I may be smarter than the average 7-year-old, but I don't have a clue what's behind this gate," Naruto thought. Suddenly a pair of crimson-red eyes and razor-sharp teeth appeared out of the darkness. It gave off an evil but powerful chakra. "Come close to the gate, child," the voice said. Naruto cowered behind the white-haired man. He turned toward Naruto and grabbed him by his arm. He then pushed Naruto in front of the gate so he could face whoever or whatever was behind it. "Stop being afraid, Naruto. Uzumakis don't fear anything," he said as he put his hand on one of his blades just in case. Who's there?" Naruto asked, trying to be brave in front of his only living relative. He got closer to the gate and peered into the darkness. It was quiet for a while before three claws shot out of the space between the bars, almost impaling the young Uzumaki. Naruto fell to the floor as they started laughing at him. How can you be an Uzumaki if you can't stand up to me? Mother's beast form, it's pitiful, the voice said as venom dipped out of every word. The white-haired man was about to intervene, but Naruto stood up and yelled, "Shut up. What did you say to me, worm?" The beast said, daring Naruto to say it again. I said shut up, I am sick and tired people picking on me and hurting me for stuff, Naruto said as he got even closer to the gate. Maybe you're not a lost cause, Naruto thought before looking behind the boy and saw the one person it feared. Inu no Tashio Uzumaki, the beast said before it put its head down, bowing to Inu. Naruto turned to Inu and thought, why is this beast bowing to my relative? The beast then looked at Naruto before shouting, "Brat, you bow before the Demon King." After shouting, torches shot out huge flames, and for the first time Naruto could see what was behind the cage. It was a fox with blood-red fur that matched his crimson eyes, but what caught Naruto's eye was that behind the fox was 9 tails thrashing around, matching his anger. Inu then walked up to the gate before changing his eyes from amber to crimson. "You will not speak to my Mago like that, Kyuubi," Inu said in a demonic voice. The Kyuubi cowered in the sudden change in his king. Naruto looked at Inu in awe. This is my Ojichin, but why is he not old looking? Naruto thought as he looked Inu over. To Naruto he didn't look a day over 29. As Naruto kept thinking about why his Ojichin was so young looking, he failed to notice that Inu and the Kyuubi were having a discussion. After they finished and came to an agreement, Inu turned to Naruto. "Naruto," Inu said, snapping Naruto out of his trance. Naruto then shook his head before looking at his Ojichin. "Yes, Ojichin," Naruto said before he saw the smirk on the Kyuubi's face. Naruto didn't like the way the fox smirked at him. "Why did the villagers try to kill you?" Inu said. Naruto looked down at the ground as he raked his brain for a reason why the villagers might want to kill him. Sure, he played pranks on them and sometimes he stole food, but that was only when he was really hungry. When he couldn't find a good reason why, he looked up at his grandfather and said, "I don't know, Ojichin, I only stole food when I really needed it, and maybe I played some mean pranks, but I never killed anyone like they said I did, I promise, Ojichin." Inu looked at the Kyuubi before looking back at his grandson. He sighed before crouching down to Naruto's level. He placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder and gripped it firmly. "They tried to kill you because they fear you, Naruto. They fear your power as they did your mother Kushina and me. Naruto, you come from a long line of demons. Your mother and her 2 brothers were the princes and princess of the demon world, and I was the king with my 3 wives as my queens. We could destroy buildings with a single thrust, lay waste to mountains with a wave of our tails, and destroy villages with a blast. But we grew too powerful, and so the humans found a way to suppress our power. They created seals, and with those seals they split us from our true forms. They called us Jinchuriki and said that now that we didn't have our full power we could be killed. But they were oh so wrong. I, along with my family and army, laid waste this world for years and years until I figured out how to break these seals, and I did. I freed everyone who had a seal on them but my son, Inuyasha, and my daughter, Kushina. They wanted to stay half demons so they could raise a family." Inu paused as he looked at the Kyuubi before taking a deep breath and continuing, "But they couldn't because the humans once again attacked us. They poisoned me so I couldn't warn my children. They found Sesshomaru first and they somehow sealed all his power up and then killed his wife, then him. Next Inuyasha. He was with his daughter when they attacked him. They hung his daughter and wife in front of him before chopping off his head. Then came my wives, while I was being treated for the poison when they came in. My wives put up a fight, but in the end they died trying to save me. The humans thought that they had killed me when they stabbed me in the heart with my own blade, but they stabbed me with a blade that can't kill. After I was healed I rushed to find Kushina and get her to safety, but once again I was too late. They hired someone to unleash Kushina's true form and then split the 2 of them apart." He paused once again and Naruto noticed that Inu had tears in his eyes. Naruto stretched his arms out and brought Inu in for a hug. Inu let out a silent sob as he held Naruto, his last heir, the only one who could carry on the Uzumaki name when he was gone and the only one who could avenge his family. Inu stopped crying and wiped his eyes before he took on last ragged breath before continuing. The beast attacked this village and nearly destroyed it until Kushina's husband, who was a seal master and Hokage of the village at the time, sacrificed himself and your mother to seal the beast inside you. I came too late and I could only watch as the beast disappeared as I was about to join the fight. I found the bodies of your mother and father with a hole through their chest and you on an altar. Before I could take you and raise you as one of my own, the village's shinobi came and took your parents' bodies and you. I was going to go after them, but then the poison started to act up again, so I had to leave to be healed, vowing to come back for you. But before I left, I followed the shinobi and they brought you along with your parents to a council meeting. They were talking about what to do with you now that they knew the Kyuubi was sealed inside of you. Most wanted you dead, even that Hokage of yours want to kill you. But some wanted you to live so that you could be a weapon for the village. Soon the council agreed and they dubbed you the demon of the hidden leaf. I vowed that when I came back that they were going to pay for what they were going to do to you and will. Inu finished as he looked at Naruto, who had his blonde hair shadowing his eyes. Naruto, Inu said, worried about his Mago, but that all changed when he saw a evil smirk that found its way on the 7-year-old's face. Naruto picked his head up, his normal blue now a deep crimson. If they want a demon then they will get one, Naruto said in a demonic voice as he turned to the seal on the gate that separated him from the Kyuubi. The whisker marks on his face deepened and his fingernails were sharpened to a point. Ojichin, you said that this was my mother's true form, then were as mine, Naruto said in his normal voice, but his eyes were still crimson. Suddenly another voice, another figure appeared next to the fox. It was a white wolf with its own 9 tails flowing around behind it. It had red eyes just like the Kyuubi. You finally came, Naruto-sama. I thought that you would never come and I would be stuck here with this fox for the rest of your life. Oh, by the way, my name is Okami, the wolf said before he looked over at Inu and bowed. I am sorry that you and I couldn't speak for so long, and I'm that I will leave you when the fox and I fuse and Inu-sama gets rid of this seal, Okami said as he tried to smile at the boy, but it came off as an evil grin because of the fangs that he had. It's okay, so I'm glad I met you and at least someone cared about me, even if it was for a short time, Naruto said as he placed his hand on top of Okami's head. Inu came up to the gate before doing some hand symbols and saying demon style, demon fusion jutsu. Then 2 bright red lights came out of Inu's hands and rushed toward the 2 giant demons. Goodbye, Naruto, Okami said. Yeah, see you in the other world, kid, Kyuubi said before he and Okami were pulled together as their bodies were glowing white. As the light dies down, there stood a white wolf with red streaks in its fur with 18 tails flowing behind it. When it opened its eyes, it saw that were a dark red, almost black. But the wolf didn't stay there long as Inu did more hand symbols before saying demon style, almighty seal destroyer. Then fire shot out of Inu's hands and engulfed the gate in roaring flames. Naruto had to shield his eyes as the flames grew too bright for him to look at. When the flames died down, Naruto looked at the gate to see that the seal was gone, and then the gate swung open. The wolf walked out before I began to glow red as it got closer to Naruto. Naruto put his hand out and touched the wolf's snout. To Naruto's surprise, then wolf began to be absorbed into him. The more of the wolf that was absorbed, the more powerful Naruto felt. When the wolf was gone, Naruto turned to Inu and said, "What is this, Ojichin? This is the power of you and your mother combined, and with this power you will destroy this village," Inu said before putting his hand on top of Naruto's head. As Inu was rubbing his head, he noticed that there was a pair of canine ears on top of his head just like his mother, Kushina, and his uncle, Inuyasha, had. Okay, Ojichin, but I want to save the people that were nice to me. Thought is that okay, Ojichin? Naruto said as he looked up at Inu. Inu chuckled before nodding his head. Naruto jumped up and cheered before he ran around Inu chanting, "I'm gonna destroy the hidden leaf." Inu tapped Naruto on his shoulder before he said, Before you can destroy this village, you must first be trained, and that is what you and I will be doing for the next 7 years. Naruto nodded his head before smiling brightly at Inu. Good, now let's get out of here and get your father's stuff out of his compound, Inu said before he felt a tug in the back of his head. Inside of Konohagakure, Naruto sat up and put his hand on his head. Wowda, I have a headache, Naruto thought before he heard a groan next to him. He turned to Inu trying to stand up. Naruto rushed to his side to try and help his Ojichin. Inu smiled at Naruto before looking behind him and saw that not a thing had changed. The village was still partying and don't have a clue what had just happened. Naruto, how are your wounds? Inu said, causing Naruto to look down at himself. He had forgot that the mob had nearly killed him, but to his surprise the wounds were gone. He lifted his shirt and saw no hole or branding mark on his chest. Instead, Naruto saw a tattoo of an wolf with 18 tails over his heart. He smiled before he looked at Inu. You said that we had to my father's stuff out of his compound, but you didn't say who my father was, Naruto said. True, I didn't, but I gave you pretty big hints, like he was a seal master, he was the Hokage of this village, and that he defeated the Kyuubi. So Naruto, who is your father? Inu said as a grin came on Naruto's face when he realized who his father was. The fourth Hokage is my father, Naruto said, only to get a nod from Inu. Naruto ran around Inu putting his arms out as he pretended to be an airplane. Naruto, come on, we have to go, Inu said before Naruto nodded. Inu grabbed Naruto by his arm before he and Naruto vanished. At the Namikaze compound, Naruto looked at the large compound in awe, as he had always dreamed of living in a place like this. Naruto, I need you to come here so you can open the door, Inu said as he approached the wall. The wall had 5 seals in a pentagon shape. The writing on the seals told Inu that it was a blood seal that could only open when someone of Namikaze blood. Naruto looked at Inu in confusion. How are we going to get in if there isn't a door? Naruto said. Inu smirked before pulling a kunai out of his pouch. He grabbed Naruto's arm and gently cut his palm. Naruto winced in pain but didn't complain. Inu then placed Naruto's bloody hand in the middle of the 5 seals, and then the blood was absorbed by the seals. Naruto pulled his hand back in time to see his cut healing already, and in 2 seconds it was healed. Wow, I can get used to this, Naruto thought as he watched the wall began to have a ripple effect to it when he pulled his hand away. Come Naruto, we have to get all the supplies out of here so they can help you in your journey, Inu said as he walked through the wall. Wow, my Ojichin is so cool, Naruto thought as he followed Inu through. 2 hours later, outside of Konohagakure, Naruto and Inu were standing on top of a large tree looking back at Konohagakure. Inu had multiple storage scrolls tied around his back and his waist. Naruto had 5 storage scrolls on his back and in his hands. Inu looked at the village as he had a wicked smile on his face. Konohagakure doesn't know what they just did. They have declared war on all demons, and for that they will all pay. All except the ones that Mago wants to live. Oh well, see you 7 years, Konohagakure, Inu thought before he and Naruto vanished in the night. Years later, outside Konohagakure, Naruto no Taisho Uzumaki Namikaze Uchiha was walking along the pathway that lead to the village of Konohagakure. Naruto learned about being an Uchiha from looking at his father's scrolls about the Sharingan, and he also grabbed his father's birth certificate for whatever reason. But what shocked Naruto the most was his father's full name, which was Minato Namikaze Uchiha. Naruto understood why his father never used the Uchiha surname. It was so his foes underestimated him in battle. Naruto continued to walk down the path thinking about his family. Ojichin, I'll make you Ka-chan and Tu-chan proud, Naruto thought before he heard his loud shriek. Someone help me, the female voice said. Naruto narrowed his eyes before dashing toward the voice at breakneck speeds. Naruto jumped into a tree and looked to the left to see a teenage girl about his age on the ground backing up slowly away from 3 men. Naruto kept a firm grip on Bakuseiga as he watched what was happening. Oh look what we have, the Hyuga heiress all alone, one of the 3 men said. The others laughed as they advanced toward the girl. Suddenly Naruto got a sense of deja vu as he remembered what the villagers did to him 7 years ago. Flashback. The villager advanced the young Uzumaki before he pulled the pipe back before plunging it deep in the boy's shoulder. Naruto thrashed in pain as he tried to scream, but the man held his hand over Naruto's mouth. Naruto's vision began to get blurry and he could feel himself getting weaker. As his eyes began to close, before he opened them widely as the pipe was ripped out of his shoulder, the pain waking Naruto up. He then stabbed the pipe in Naruto's leg, twisting it as he repeated the process on the other leg. Naruto could barely think as the pain grew stronger and stronger. The other villagers followed and began to beat Naruto to death. They punched, kicked, stabbed, slashed, burned and even branded the poor boy. When they were finished, they threw him against the wall. He was breathing even heavier than before, if that is even possible. His blonde bangs that now had blood in it shadowed his eyes so they could not see the tears. The branding mark over his heart felt like it was still on fire. Maybe it's because they poured salt into the wound after they branded me, Naruto thought as he tried with all his might to stand up. But as he soon realized his legs were broken, his right arm dislocated and his left shoulder had a tennis ball-sized hole in it. Is this it? Is this how I die? By people who I wanted to protect when I grew up, Naruto thought. The sound of gravel crunching brought the blonde's attention to the man standing in front of him. Naruto brought his head up slowly to see a man with white hair that seemed to defy gravity. He was wearing the standard Anbu gear and had a wolf mask with red markings. Naruto looked deep in his eyes and saw that one was gray while the other was a bright red and had 3 spinning tomos. Even thought Naruto couldn't see the man's face, he knew that was angry at him just like the rest of them. The white-haired man lifted up his left hand before electricity came out of nowhere surrounding his hand. This is for my sensei, you demon brat, he said before pulling his hand back. Chidori, he shouted before plunging his hand into Naruto's chest. Naruto felt the electricity flow through his body as it numbed his body. He felt his heartbeat slow down as his eyes grew heavier and heavier. Naruto slumped against the wall dead. Flashback end. Throughout the flashback, Naruto subconsciously clenched his area around his heart. That white-haired Anbu is going to suffer for what he did, Naruto thought before he snapped his head up at the sound of katanas being drawn. The 3 men all had their blades held high in air as they let out a loud yell as they brought down their blades. Naruto quickly put his face mask on before rushing at the 3 men at impossible speeds, cracking the ground as he ran. Naruto grabbed the girl and brought her back to the tree he was standing on just as the men's blade hit the empty spot. What the hell, where did she go? One guy said as he looked around the clearing for her. The 3 of them went back to back and stood in the middle so they could see the whole clearing in case they had to defend themselves. Where the hell did she go? One guy thought as he began to sweat along with his partners. Naruto smirked as he could see the faces from a safe distances thanks to his advanced eyesight. Good, they're scared, but I wish they would be a little bit stronger than this. I mean, they're shinobi for Kami's sake, Naruto thought before letting his claws extend. Naruto then jumped into the air before landing 10 feet away from the 3 men. Who the are you? The tallest ninja said. Naruto smirked before taking off his shades and letting them see his blood-red eyes. Who am I? Well, to you I'm the Grim Reaper, Naruto said in a demonic voice. The 2 ninjas beside the tall one tightened their grip on their swords before disappearing. Naruto jumped back just as their blades struck the ground. Suddenly they both had huge gashes on left shoulder. They screamed out in pain before another gash was found on their stomachs. They fell on their knees, clenching their stomachs. Naruto appeared behind the 2 and shouted, blades of blood. Naruto thrusted his hand forward as multiple blood-red crescent-shaped waves flew toward the 2 defenseless ninja. The waves cut into their skin, making blood spurt out of the wounds. They were about to fall to the floor and bleed out, but before they could, Naruto came, shoved both his hands through their stomach and out their backs. While going through, Naruto grabbed their intestines and broke their spines. He then proceeded to yank his arms back and drop their intestines. The 2 ninja fell to the ground as they felt their life slipping away from them. With the last bit of their life they watched as Naruto brought his foot up before stomping on their heads, cracking their skulls and splattering blood and pieces of skull and brain everywhere. Naruto then turned his head toward the last ninja, who was shaking from watching what happened to his friends. Tears began to fall down his eyes as he realized that he did nothing while his friends were being demolished in the fight. His vision began to get blurry as he tightened his grip on the katana in his hands. Brock, Kevin, you two died because of me, he said to himself, but Naruto heard with his enhanced hearing. Naruto once again smirked behind his mask as he tightened his grip around Bakuseiga. Maybe I'll kill this guy with your sword, Ka-chan, Naruto thought before the last ninja rushed at him, sword held high in the air. Bastard, I'll kill you for what you did, he yelled as he ran faster toward Naruto. He got closer and closer before he swung his sword, aiming for Naruto's neck. It was silent for a moment, so you could hear the two thuds of his head and body hitting the ground, but in separate locations. Naruto looked at all their foreheads and saw that they were from the hidden cloud village. Naruto then walked away while putting Bakuseiga back in its sheath. He then jumped into the tree that he left the girl in and analyzed her for the first time. Naruto was thankful that his Ojichin gave him this face mask to hide his blush he had on his face when he saw her appearance. Her hair is in a short, leveled Heim cut style just above her forehead, with chin-length strands framing her face. She wore a cream-colored hooded jacket with a fire symbol on the upper right and left sleeves and fur around the cuffs and hem, with navy blue pants. Naruto placed his hand, which he cleaned the blood off of with a rag, on her face, gently caressing it. The girl then subconsciously moved her face deeper in his hand before slowly opening her eyes. Naruto couldn't get those eyes out of his head. They were white with a tinge of lavender, but what got Naruto's attention was that she had no pupils. Naruto snapped out of his trance when he heard the girl gasp before realizing that their faces were inches apart. Naruto pulled away before putting on his shades covering his now blue eyes. The two were silent for a while, then the girl broke the silence by hugging Naruto and saying, "Thank you for saving me." She began to blush as she felt the muscle on the silk material on Naruto's suit. For Naruto's suit, think Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe, but instead of a helmet he has shades and a face mask like Kakashi's. Naruto slowly hugged her back before saying, "You're welcome, but what did those guys want with you?" She looked down at the ground before turning her eyes toward Naruto. "They wanted my Kekkei Genkei, that only the Hyuga clan can have, the Byakugan," she said before swinging her legs back and forth. Naruto thought for a moment before saying, "If only the Hyuga clan can have Byakugan, and from what those guys said is true and you are the heiress to your clan, then why are you not under protection?" Naruto turned to her just in time to see her wipe tears that were threatening to fall. She shrugged her shoulders before saying, "I ran away. They didn't want me there. They would say that I was too nice and that made a Hyuga weak. They said that my sister should be the heiress instead of me, and my father, being the clan head, agreed, but my mother stopped him. She would always stop him. But when she died, my father finally could get me out of the position of heiress, so before he could tell me the news, I left, took all my stuff and left last night. I didn't even graduate from Ninja Academy yet, but even if I did, then it wouldn't matter. My father would still make my sister heiress and the whole clan would be able to act out on their hatred for me," she finished before sighing heavily. "She's kinda like me," Naruto thought before he looked toward the village behind him. Naruto. W. What? My name is Naruto. My name is Hinata, she said, stuttering at a few parts. Naruto stood up before saying, "All right, let's go." Naruto held his hand out to her. "Where are we going?" Hinata said. Naruto sighed before saying, "To Konohagakure, that's where." She shook her head before standing up. "No, I will not go back there and live with those people," Hinata said, turning her back to Naruto. Naruto thought for a moment before saying, "Okay, then live with me." WH. What? She asked, her face turning red. She turned to Naruto, who was cracking his neck and back. "Yeah, I live all alone since my Ojichin left, and you don't live at your house, so live with me," Naruto said before looking at her. She put her head down to hide her blush that was deepening by the second. We just met and her wants me to live with him, Hinata thought before she began to get lightheaded. Her vision began to get blurry before she started to fall backwards out of the tree. Naruto saw this and quickly jumped out of the tree and landed on the ground in time to catch her unconscious body. She passed out and I don't even know where her back is, Naruto thought before he started to look at around the clearing for her bag. After a while he found in a tree. That's just great, how the hell am I going to get up there without leaving Hinata unattended? Oh wait, I know, Naruto thought before he placed Hinata gently on the ground. He put his fingers together in a cross formation and said Shadow Clone Jutsu. Instantly another Naruto appeared in a puff of smoke. The Naruto clone picked up Hinata while the real Naruto walked up the tree and grabbed the bag. After making sure it was secure on his back, he backflipped off the tree and landed next to his clone. After the clone of Naruto handed Hinata back to the clone was dispelled in a puff of smoke. After making sure that Hinata, her bag and his 4 swords were secure, he began to jump from treetop to treetop, getting closer to one place he wanted to destroy. At the gate of Konoha, Naruto landed in front of 2 of the Leaf Shinobi. He knew they were Leaf Shinobi by the headbands they were wearing. One guard walked up to Naruto and placed his hand on his kunai pouch. "State your business," he said as if daring the blonde to try something. Naruto's ears twitched in annoyance before he took a deep breath and said, "I'm here to bring back a citizen of yours and I wanted to talk to the Hokage." The guard then walked toward Hinata and looked at her face. He gasped when he saw that it was the missing girl from the Hyuga clan. "If I tell the council I found her, they will reward me greatly," he thought as he reached his hands out to take her from Naruto. But before he could get the chance, Naruto jumped backwards away from the Leaf Shinobi. He glared at the man, not trusting him or anyone from the Leaf at the moment. "I'll take her and I don't know you, so why should I trust you? Kid, you're walking into my village, you're going to listen to what I say. And if I don't, then you're gonna regret it, brat. Try me," Naruto said before made a shadow clone to hold Hinata. This surprised the guards because that was a forbidden jutsu and took a shit ton of chakra. Naruto cracked his knuckles before getting in a fighting pose that they didn't recognize. The guard that was still at the gate didn't want to fight the kid if he knew a forbidden jutsu, quickly intervened. "You may go, but you have to stray to the Hokage," he said as he opened the gate. Naruto nodded, grabbed Hinata before dispelling the clone and dashing into the village, going straight to the Hokage's tower. "I remember always going here as a kid to be protected by him. Now that I know the truth, I know not trust him or anyone else in this damn village," Naruto thought as he jumped from rooftop to rooftop until he landed in front of the Hokage's tower. Naruto hedged his ears so no one knew who he was. He walked up to the secretary and asked for a meeting with the Hokage. She told him that he was in his office. Naruto noticed that she was a lot nicer to him when she didn't know who he was. When Naruto got to the top of the tower, he knocked on the door and waited until he heard an enter come from someone inside. When Naruto opened the door, he was greeted by the Hokage with a warm welcome. "Yeah, let's see how long this welcome lasts when he figures out who I am," Naruto thought as he placed Hinata down on the couch before standing in front of the Hokage. "Hello. First let me be the first to welcome you to Konoha. I am Sarutobi, the Hokage of this village. And how did you come across the young Hyuga clan member?" Sarutobi asked, giving a smile. Naruto knew that smile was fake. He had that smile before on his journeys with his Ojichin. Naruto then explained how he was walking down the pathway to Konoha, heard Hinata scream for help and how he saved and brought her back here, but he left out some of the details like who he was and why Hinata was outside the village. The Hokage then stood up and placed his hands on Naruto's shoulders. Naruto had to hold back the urge to cut the man's head off with Tessaiga. "Now how old are you, mister?" Sarutobi said, stopping so Naruto could finish. Naruto smirked before saying, "Uzumaki." Sarutobi frowned before he let his hand fall sewn to his side. Suddenly he analyzed the boy standing in front of him. Blonde hair, Uzumaki surname, and I bet if I take his glasses and mask off then I'll see whisker marks and blue eyes. Okay, I have to pretend that I am still nice to him, Sarutobi thought before he forced a smile. Welcome back, Naruto. May I ask where you have been for 7 years? Sarutobi said as he stared at the boy's swords. Huh, those swords look powerful. Maybe I can convince him to give them to Sasuke. I mean, those weapons don't belong to a demon, Sarutobi thought as he continued to analyze Naruto's swords. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the Hokage through his shades but knew that if he did attack the Hokage then the 5 Anbu guards that are in here would attack him as well. Even though I can beat them, I don't want to destroy the village yet. No, I want to become an elite Anbu and then take them down, because if I become Konohagakure's strongest ninja then there will be no one that will be able to even attempt to save the village, Naruto thought before he grinned at his plans. Luckily the idiot of a Hokage was still eyeing his blades. Hokage-sama, Naruto said through gritted teeth as he hated giving this idiot respect. I was with my Ojichin for the past 7 years and I want to become a leaf shinobi, so can I join the academy? Sarutobi thought about this for a long time. If we get the demon stronger then he could give us the military advantage, Sarutobi thought before smiling, thinking that Naruto was still the dumb blonde that was still under his and the council's thumb. Sure, Naruto, just give the teacher this note at the academy and you can take the Genin exam, Sarutobi said as he handed Naruto the note. Just as they were finishing up, Hinata began to move around, signaling Naruto that she was about to wake up. Naruto crouched in front of her as she began to open her eyes. She soon began to blush as thoughts started to race through her head about the blonde ninja. Come on, Hinata, we have an exam to take, Naruto said as he held his hand to her. She nodded her head, not trusting her voice, and grabbed his hand. While Hinata was not looking, Sarutobi scowled at the two, thinking that if the demon breed with a Hyuga then world as we know it would be over. Naruto saw the scowl through his shades and made his eyes turn blood red. Sarutobi looked at Naruto and he saw that he could see 2 red spots in his shades. Naruto proceeded to lead Hinata out of the Hokage's office and began to walk toward the academy. So Hinata, what's the academy like? It's full of people who either hate or worship Sasuke Uchiha, but it's not all of them. Ino, Yamanaka, Tenten, and Karen are nice to me. Good to know, but who is Sasuke Uchiha? He's the last Uchiha alive in the village ever since his brother Itachi killed the whole clan. So basically they all kiss his because he is the last holder of the Sharingan. Yeah, but how did you know about the Sharingan? Because I am an Uchiha and I have a Sharingan. No way, prove it, Hinata said, not believing a word he said. Naruto shrugged before taking off his shades and activated his Sharingan. Hinata activated her Byakugan to see if it was a fake, but to her surprise it was real. Wow, so you really have it? Yeah, but it's not fully mastered yet, there is another level to it. Why are you telling me all this stuff about you? I don't know, I just feel like I can trust you. Oh, Hinata said before the academy came into view. Hinata began to walk slower than was before and Naruto noticed. He slowed down as well as he wanted to continue talking to her. So are you walking slow because we have an exam or because you're afraid of what people are going to say to you? I'm afraid that when you met everyone else then you will leave me to be someone else's friend. Oh, that's not going to happen, Hinata-chan, Naruto said, not noticing the chan suffix that he added to her name. Hinata-chan, he called me Hinata-chan, Hinata thought as she walked faster toward the school. Naruto noticed this and put his hands behind his head and walked up so he was right next to her. Hinata, you do know that you have to drop your bag off at my house, right? Naruto said before he threw her the bag. Hinata gasped, forgetting all about her bag. She turned about to run to put it away but then remembered that she would be living with Naruto and she didn't know where he lived. Naruto-kun, she said, blushing at the kun suffix that she added at the end. Yeah, I don't know where you live at. Oh yeah, give it here, I'll go and place it in the spare bedroom, Naruto said before he summoned a shadow clone. He took the bag out of Hinata's hands and gave it to the clone. The clone then jumped in the air before rushing toward the Namikaze compound. Alright, let's go, Naruto said as he opened the door for Hinata so she could walk in first. Hinata blushed as this was the first time that any male was nice to her. She thanked him before she guided them toward their classroom. Hinata stopped at the door, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door. The door slid open to show Ninja Academy, Konohagakure. A man of average height and build. He has brown hair that he kept in a ponytail, dark eyes, and a scar that runs across the bridge of his nose. He wears the standard Konoha shinobi outfit complete with forehead protector, sandals, and flak jacket. His sleeves are also rolled up about 1/4 way. He frowned when he saw the newcomers. He recognized Hinata Hyuga, but the blonde he didn't know. Why does this kid seem familiar, he thought as he racked his brain for names. He was deep in thought before Hinata's soft voice broke him from his trance-like state. What? I said I'm sorry we're late, but we are here to take the exam. That's quite alright, but the blonde can't, he doesn't have the knowledge or the skills to do the exam, he said as he ushered Hinata in the class and tried to close the door, but it was stopped by a foot in the door. Naruto then handed the teacher the note from the Hokage before he had a chance to yell at him. The teacher took the note, read it over before pocketing it. Okay, well then, I am Iruka Yumino, your sensei for the day, Iruka said before sticking his hand out in a friendly gesture. Naruto looked at his hand before walking past him and into the classroom. Iruka was baffled that he just ignored him and shook his head before entering the class. Iruka noticed a couple of things when he entered the class. 1, that almost every girl was staring at Naruto, 2, that almost every boy was glaring at Naruto, Sasuke included, and 3, that Kiba Inuzuka was walking toward Naruto. Oh great, now I have to go get a nurse if Kiba is going to do what I think he's gonna do, Iruka thought as he hurried out of the class going toward the nurse's office. Kiba stood in front of Naruto, much to the girl's disappointment. Naruto noticed Kiba but paid no attention to him. After a full minute of being ignored, Kiba slammed his hands on the table. Everyone jumped beside Naruto and Sasuke at the sudden noise. Kiba got in Naruto's face and said, "Who are you? What are you doing in my seat, and why are talking to my girl?" Naruto looked up at Kiba before resting his head on Hinata's shoulder. Hinata then blushed at the sudden contact and thus making some girls glare at Hinata. Kiba, being the short-tempered idiot he is, tried to pull Naruto out of his seat. Well, as he went to grab Naruto, Naruto got up, grabbed, flipped Kiba over his shoulder. He then grabbed both of Kiba's arms and pulled them back as placed his foot on Kiba's back. With hard tug, Naruto dislocated both of Kiba's arms. Then he kicked Kiba into the nearby wall, cracking it. The class gasped at what they had just witnessed. He beat Kiba with even trying, Hinata thought. Just then Iruka came into the classroom with the nurse so she could treat Kiba's injuries. So does anyone want to tell me what happened? Iruka said while crossing his arms. Suddenly everyone started talking, Naruto, Hinata, Ino, Karen and Ten included, but it was to each other so they could get acquainted with each other. The 4 girls began to develop a small crush on Naruto. They don't know why, maybe it was the way he acted or the way his ninja suit clung to his body showing his muscles, but all they knew was that they wanted to get closer to him. Hinata was happy because she would get to live with him for a while. But then they heard the voice of a soiled brat, a pampered bubblegum princess, and a lazy genius. The dope beat up Kiba for no reason, a boy with a duck butt hairstyle said. Yeah, he did what Sasuke said, a pink hair girl said. You should kick him out, a boy with a pineapple-shaped bun on his head yelled. Many others began to say the same as these 3. Hearing that everyone was turning on Naruto because he was new, the girls stood you. No, that's not fair, Kiba started it, Hinata said, surprising everyone because Hinata wasn't the one to speak out loud. She would be the quiet one that Iruka would always ask to speak up. Yeah, Kiba tried to punch him, a Karen said once, surprising everyone because Karen wasn't too fond of boys because of an incident that happened between her and Sasuke. That's not fair if you kick him out, Ten and Ino shouted, surprising the class for the last time. These were the next ice queens of Konohagakure. The girls who didn't want a boyfriend but was wanted by every boy in the academy, and here they were not only taking interest in the same boy but defending him as well. These arguments then continued, much to Iruka's displeasure. Naruto could care less, he was too busy petting this white dog he had found. It seemed to take a liking to Naruto. Hinata and the three other girls who were defending him stopped and stared at Naruto in awe. Akamaru never is this nice to anyone beside Kiba, Hinata thought. The other girls were thinking the same thing. A while later Kiba was healed and Iruka finally got the class to settle down. Iruka then began to do roll call so he could finally begin the exam. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Shino Aburame, Bruce Young, Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, Jane Doe, Don Lee, Tammy Chan, Kim Chong, Lily Wong, Hinata Hyuga, Ten, Karen, Takeo Yoshi, Choji Akamichi. Kiba Inuzuka, Lucy Liu, Neji Hyuga, Rock Lee and Naruto Uzumaki. Iruka finished with a smile. He remembered Naruto from when he took care of him until he lived in his apartment. Naruto noticed this and made a mental note to find out why he was acting this way. Iruka explained that there was 2 parts to the exam and that there will be another shinobi monitoring the exams. He told them that if anyone was caught cheating, then that person would fail that part of the exam, meaning that they fail the entire exam. Soon a shinobi named Mizuki came in. Mizuki has white shoulder-length hair with a slight hint of blue to it and green eyes. He wore the standard attire of the Konoha nin before his defection, which included flak jacket and forehead protector that he wore like a bandana. Mizuki handed the exam booklets to each student and told them they had an hour to finish. While the students were taking the test, Mizuki was looking for a student he could use to get something for him. Maybe I can get the Uchiha to do it. Nah, he doesn't listen to anyone beside the council. How about that new kid in the back? He finished his test pretty quick. If he fails, then I could get him to steal it. But the new Hyuga heiress may be the best candidate. I mean, she must want to get a higher than heiress as soon as possible, so I'll tell her that if she learns a forbidden jutsu, then she could get a seat on the consul. Yep, I use her as my puppet and then me and Hayate can get our rewards from the master. I'll trick the dumb girl and get away scot-free, Mizuki thought as he sent a smile in Hinata's direction. Naruto saw this as well and narrowed his eyes at the man, though no one could see Naruto do this, but Mizuki felt uncomfortable all of a sudden. Soon everyone finished their test, and when the hour was up, Iruka and Mizuki collected the papers and Iruka began to grade them. After 10 minutes, Iruka announced the top 4 scorers. Naruto Uzumaki 100 out of 100, Hinata Hyuga 99 out of 100, Sasuke Uchiha 99 out of 100 and Karen 98 out of 100. When Iruka finished, most of the female population in the class started complaining. No way that anyone is better than Sasuke-kun, Sakura said. Yeah, he probably cheated on the test, make him do it again, Lucy said. My Sasuke-kun is the best, nobody can beat him, Jane said. What do you mean you're Sasuke-kun, Jane? Kim said. Then all of Sasuke's fangirls began to argue about who Sasuke belonged to. Naruto got annoyed quickly and got out of his chair and walked toward Iruka. Akamaru following right behind him, barking happily, much to Kiba's displeasure. Hey Iruka-sensei, Naruto said, shocking everyone except Hinata and her friends because up until this point no one heard Naruto's voice. Akamaru barked, showing that he liked how smooth his voice was. Yes, Naruto, he said with a smile. I would like to take the other part of the exam now. Okay, but we have to have the other students watch for an example, is that okay? Whatever you want, Naruto said before Iruka stood up and led Naruto and the class outside. Outside the Ninja Academy, Konohagakure. Once outside, Mizuki and Iruka set up the targets and then told the class to stand 5 feet away from the testing area. Once everyone was where they wanted them to be, they told Naruto what to do. Okay Naruto, for this part you will have to try to hit each target on the red dot in the middle. If you do hit the red dot, it's an automatic 100 for that target. The farther you go, the more points you earn. If you happen to hit all the targets in the red dot, then you got a perfect score on this part, which no one got, Iruka explained. Mizuki was staring at Naruto with a smug look on his face. He may act all cool and stuff, but I bet he can't even hit the first red dot, he thought. Naruto grabbed 10 kunai out of his pouch and waited for the signal. Iruka threw an explosive kunai in the air and then it detonated, letting Naruto know that he could start. Naruto threw one kunai after another at different targets, they all hit the red dot perfectly. Sasuke scowled at the display of skill while the others were trying to pick up their jaws off the ground. Where the dope get his skill from? He must get special training. Maybe I can make the council make him give me the same training and those swords of his too. Yes, with skills like those then I will be on step closer to killing Itachi, Sasuke thought, his frown becoming a smirk. Sakura noticed the smirk and wondered what was so amusing to her crush. Maybe he's thinking about me and him going out on a date, Sakura thought before squealing to herself. Once Iruka and the others composed themselves, Iruka told Naruto to continue his exam, which was the jutsu portion. Naruto pondered on what level jutsu he should use. I don't want to show all my strength, but at the same time I don't want to appear weak to any of these people. Maybe a Chunin level jutsu will be enough, Naruto thought before smiling under his mask. He turned to Hinata, Ino, Karen and Tenten and sent a wink in their direction, thus making said girls blush. Naruto then waited for Iruka to signal him to start. Iruka then threw an explosive kunai in the air. When it detonated, that signaled Naruto to begin his exam. Naruto did a couple of hand symbols before shouting wind torpedo. Naruto then took a deep breath before he expels it in a single blow. The wind that Naruto expelled formed a torpedo that is near invisible as it launches towards the test dummies. Upon contact it explodes the targets with the force of 6 exploding tags. So of the students have to shield their eyes from the dust that was being thrown around the area. Hinata picked up Akamaru and put him in her jacket so he wouldn't get blown away by the wind. Good, now they know to fear my power, even if it's not my full power, Naruto thought as he looked at the house-sized crater that was embedded in the ground. Iruka and Mizuki were slightly afraid of the boy. How did learn about his elemental jutsu at his age, and how can he use that much chakra in the jutsu and not suffer from chakra exhaustion, Iruka thought as he surveyed the land. To say it was ruined was an understatement. On top of the house-sized hole in the ground, Naruto somehow uprooted 4 fully grown trees and scattered them around the field, breaking the playground and one crashing through the academy window where their classroom was. In other words, the field was not fit to hold the genin exam, so he would have to use one of the training fields for leaf shinobis. Alright everyone, after Naruto finishes his exam we have to do the rest of your exams at the training fields for leaf shinobi, Iruka said as the class erupted in cheers until Iruka and Mizuki told them to shut up. Well, more Mizuki than Iruka. Iruka then told Naruto the final part of the test was making a clone and the use a hedge on yourself. Naruto easily made 3 shadow clones and then hedged them and himself as Hinata, Karen, Tenten and Ino. Iruka was impressed because of Naruto's hedge, it was a perfect replicate of the original and he had no practice. I wonder what other abilities that Naruto has hidden in that mind of his, and there's no telling what those swords of his do, Iruka thought as he stared at the boy. Unknown to everyone beside Naruto, there was 4 shinobis watching the events that was taking place for the rooftops across from the schoolyard. How the hell did a kid that's going to be a genin do a chunin level jutsu and do that much damage, said a woman with light brown, pupil-less eyes, and black hair which has a blue tint to it, which is styled in a short, spiky, fan ponytail. She is wearing a tan overcoat with a purple inseam, which has a pocket on both sides, and complete with a fitted mesh bodysuit that stretches from her neck down to her thighs. She wears a dark orange mini skirt, as well as a forehead protector, a small pendant that looks like a snake fang on a thick cord rather than a chain to prevent it from being easily torn off in combat, a wristwatch, and pale gray shin guards. She also wears a dark blue belt around her waist that connects to her skirt that has an appendage-like sash. I don't know Anko-chan, but all I know is that this boy is something else, answered a fairly tall and light-skinned woman of slender build. She has long, black, shoulder-length untamed hair, and very unique eyes that are red in color, with an additional ring in them. She wears makeup consisting of red lipstick and purple eyeshadow. Her outfit consists of a red mesh armor blouse with only the right sleeve visible. Overall, This very broad material resembles bandages with a pattern on it similar to those of rose thorns. Her hands and upper thighs are also wrapped in bandages, and she wears the Konoha forehead protector and regular shinobi sandals. Well, he's alright in my book, Kurenai-chan. I mean, look how Akamaru is acting around him. Plus this kid treats him better than Kiba does. I swear it's like Kiba doesn't want Akamaru anymore, said another woman in a crouched position. This woman had long brown hair which she wears in a ponytail with 2 locks of hair framing her face and large, black eyes. She also wears a light shade of lipstick and has the traditional fang-like tattoos of the Inuzuka clan on both of her cheeks, in addition to a tattoo on her upper right arm that resembles a flower. She's wearing a form-fitting variation of the Konoha flak jacket which doesn't have any chest pockets, and she keeps the front of her jacket unzipped, exposing her cleavage. She also wears a pair of form-fitting shorts cut just above the knee, bandages just below her tattoo, and wrist warmers. So Hana-chan seems to like him, and so do Kurenai-chan and me. So what about you, Yugao-chan? Anko said as she turned to the lone Anbu who was staring at the boy. Why does he seem so familiar? The Anbu as she watched the lone boy petting Akamaru while he watched the rest of his class finish their exams. She smirked as she realized what he was doing. He's analyzing them, trying to find their strengths and their weakness. I bet he will use the information he gathered for a later date, she thought. She stood up and let the light hit her body. It showed a young woman with straight, purple hair reaching down to her waist, and brown eyes, and a shade of red lipstick. As an Anbu member, Yugao had a porcelain mask resembling a cat with 3 red stripes, 1 vertical stripe on the forehead and 2 horizontal stripes, 1 on each cheek, strapped on her waist. She also wears the standard Anbu uniform, consisting of black and gray armor, metal arm guards and a katana strapped to her back. She has the signature Anbu tattoo on her right shoulder. He has a hidden talent that he doesn't want anyone to know about yet, Yugao said, and the others agreed, stating that it seemed like he was holding back a lot. Just as they finished talking, Naruto turned his head and faced their direction. He then stood up, made sure Akamaru was safely in his arms before he disappeared in a red flash. Suddenly the girls felt a blade at their throats and a small blade at the base of their spines. They all cursed at themselves for leaving their guards down, especially Yugao. I am an Anbu, I should never let my guard down, she thought as she continued to mentally scold himself. Suddenly the girls were turned around to face the kid they were just watching staring at them without his shades on. His cold blue eyes peering at them, they could tell that they held much pain and anguish, more than they have seen in their lives. No, why are you 4 lovely ladies watching me from afar? Naruto said as looked at each and every one of them. Why should we tell you? Anko said before she felt the pressure of the blade increase on her throat. Anko-chan, we don't know anything about this kid, Hana said as she tried to calm her raging friend down. Well, I guess that you 4 aren't getting out of that position until one of you talks, Naruto said as he sat on the ground as he placed Akamaru on top of his head. Akamaru then yawned as he went to sleep for a while. 5 minutes later, after Kurenai tried to once again use another genjutsu on him only for it to not affect him, she cracked. Okay, fine, I'll tell you why we were watching you, she said, surprising the other 3 females. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He didn't think that she would break first, he thought that Anko woman would. We were first watching the 4 girls that you were talking to today, you know, Hinata, Ino, Karen, and Ten. Well, while we were watching them we noticed that they would begin to subconsciously flirt with you, so we wanted to see what you had that other boys didn't. So here we are now, captured by a kid who's not even a genin, Kurenai finished before she felt the blade leave her neck. She turned to see that Anko, Hana, and Yugao were as free. She felt her kek and she was surprised to see blood on her hand. I didn't even feel the blade cut me, she thought. You know, rank isn't everything. There could be a genin who could the strongest ninja alive but just doesn't want to be targeted by anyone, so he keeps his rank low so no one will know his true strength. And do you know why? Because everything is based on rank, and so enemy ninjas will underestimate him and pay the price for it. Remember these words. Oh, and by the way, you should get those cuts checked out, they are dangerously close to your jugular, Naruto said before he disappeared with Akamaru in a flash. Naruto returned just in time to see the girls do their portion of the exam. He noticed that they are very skilled and had a lot of hidden potential. Maybe I can convince them to help me in the destruction of Konohagakure, but it will take a lot of time and I will have to earn their trust and friendship. Plus those four are pretty cute, maybe I could take them all out for something to eat tomorrow and get to know them better, Naruto thought as he continued to play with Akamaru. Naruto looked at Kiba and saw that he could care less about the fact that Akamaru was playing with Naruto. With any luck, Akamaru may just follow Naruto home and leave me alone. I never wanted him, but my mother insisted that I get a puppy. Puppies are weak and I want a strong dog. Maybe I could get that black wolf that nobody in the entire clan can befriend, Kiba thought with a smug smile. After finishing the exam, Iruka congratulated the students that passed and told the ones who didn't either study more or to practice on their ninja skills. Iruka then gave the passing students their Konoha forehead protectors, much to Naruto's displeasure. He didn't wear it on his forehead because he would look similar to a white-hair Anbu he was going to kill. He tied it around his left arm before walking out of the academy doors. 10:10, Karen, Ino and Hinata coming out next. They all stopped at the steps of the school and watched as the parents took their children home to either celebrate or help ease the pain. Soon only the 5 of them were left. They all decided to go to Naruto's house. He didn't care as long as they didn't go into the study, basement, attic and his room. To say the girls were excited was an understatement, especially for Hinata. Being known as the next Ice Queens, it wasn't easy making friends. Boys only wanted to be their friend so they could brag that they could tame the next Ice Queens. Girls hated them because they got most of the boys' attention. It was hard for them, but then they met Naruto, the only boy their age that didn't want to date them for bragging rights but just wanted to be friends for now. Namikaze compound. After the long walk, Naruto approached the wall with the seals on them and reopened the ripple effect with a single touch. He motioned for the girls to follow him as he walked through the wall. The girls were hesitant at first, but after Hinata went through, they followed. What they saw when they came through was amazing. There was a fountain in the center of the compound surrounded by rare flowers of all types. Ino ran toward the flowers and examined each one. This is a jade vine. The jade vine is a rare woody vine native to the tropical rainforests of the Philippines. It is a member of the pea and bean family and is closely related to kidney beans. The plant carries claw-shaped flowers which grow from hanging trusses. They can reach up to 3 meters in length. The flower's color can vary from blue-green to mint-green. The species has proven extremely difficult to propagate, and is considered an endangered species due to the destruction of its habitat and a decrease in natural pollinators, Ino said, spitting out information like crazy. She gasped as she looked toward the next batch of flowers that was growing from a vine on the side of the compound. Corpse flower. This fascinating flower is found mainly in low-lying tropical rainforests of Indonesia. This is one of the world's rarest, most endangered and largest flowers, and it can reach a total width of over a meter. The Rafflesia's survival is totally dependent on a specific vine called the tetrastigma vine. As the Rafflesia is a bodiless, stemless, leafless, rootless parasite, it requires the vine for nourishment and support. It is also a carrion plant, which means that it releases a pungent rotten flesh smell when in bloom to attract flies and carrion beetles to aid in pollination. Once in bloom, the flower will only last about a week before dying. Ino said as she observed and educated the group about each rare flower she saw. Ino, if like that then you'll love this, Naruto said as he led them into the house. As they walked down the hall, they pasted a huge kitchen, a medical bay and much to 10-10's delight a weapons room. Naruto stopped at the door to a greenhouse that had a seal on the door. After Naruto infused his chakra with the door, he opened it and led everyone in. He warned them not to bother the flower because it was very expensive to get it here and he didn't know where to get another one. When Ino saw the flower she nearly fainted, but luckily Naruto caught her. She felt his muscles hold her close to him and she couldn't help but blush. She covered it up by rushing out of Naruto's embrace and examining the flower, but this time Naruto gave the information. The ghost orchid is a fascinating rare plant that was presumed extinct for almost 20 years, only recently did it rear its head again. The plant is so rare because it is basically impossible to propagate. It has no leaves, does not depend on photosynthesis, and does not manufacture its own food. Like the lady slipper, it needs a specific fungus in close contact with its root system, which feeds it. The ghost orchid never grows leaves, and will therefore always depend on the fungus for its nourishment. The ghost orchid can live underground for years, without showing any external signs, and will only bloom when all conditions are optimum. This explains why some orchid enthusiasts search for years and years just to have a glimpse of this elusive flower. Naruto finished before he led everyone out of the greenhouse and resealing the door. The Ten rushed to Naruto and begged him to see the weapons in the armory. After begging for 5 minutes, Naruto said it was okay, but he told them that he couldn't take anything out of the armory. When Naruto unlocked the door, Ten rushed inside, the girls following so after. Inside the armory was Ten's dream come true. On the left was a types of katanas and swords. On the right was kunai, shurikens and explosives. Ten was muttering to herself as she was naming all the different weapons in the room. The bow, also called the staff, can be one of the most important weapons in the ninja's arsenal. It was generally around 6 feet in length, made of hardwood or bamboo, and was hollow. The reason for the hollow part was another trick of the ninja trade. By flicking the bow with great speed, the ninja could launch a poison-tipped dart or small knife out of the open end of the staff, often catching the opponent off guard. The hollowed-out bow could also be used to hide medicine, poisons, maps, or other small weapons, she said as she picked up a bow before twirling it around like an expert. She then turned to the next weapons she saw before rushing to it. The kama are the basis of the kusarigama. Kama is just the sickle on its own. They are usually used in pairs and swung in various arcs, crescents, etc. All sorts of slashing motions combined with the forward momentum of the ninja, they can cause some devastating damage. The blade of the kama is roughly around 11 to 12 inches. The handle is slightly longer. Original sickles had a longer blade and shorter handle, Ten said as she swung the kamas, getting a natural feeling from them. She placed them back before turning to the last thing that really caught her eye. The kusarigama is a combination of a sickle, short scythe, and a long chain with a weight attached to the end of it. The sickle end was used in a slashing or stabbing motion, as well as used to block and hook opponents' weapons. By holding the chain portion of the weapon, the sickle could be swung around to get a greater reach with it. The chain portion of the weapon was most often used for trapping an enemy or their weapon. Once tangled up with the chain, the ninja could finish him off with the sickle. This was a weapon the ninja invented out of farming tools they used and easily available. She said as she was starting to get lightheaded as she kept turn every second. As she was about to fall, she fell into Naruto's arms. Ten face turned bright red as she looked into his deep blue eyes and couldn't utter a single word. "You okay, Ten-chan?" Naruto said, making her blush even more. "He called me Ten-chan." Yes, Ten thought before nodding at Naruto's response. She tried to find something to change the point of interest from her to something else. "Naruto-kun, where did you get your sword's form?" Ten said, blushing a deeper shade of red because she added the kun suffix to the end of his name. Naruto didn't mind Hinata called him Naruto-kun as well. He placed Ten's feet on the ground before pulling out one of his blades. At first glance, when not in use, the Tessaiga appeared to be nothing more than a battered katana with a heavily chipped and rusted blade with the hilt's fabric tearing away. When transformed, the blade turned into an oversized dog's fang, fitting for its name. The cross guard turned into a large patch of fur similar to a dog's also. In the later chapters and episodes, the blade not only became slightly larger, but changed colors and transformed according to the abilities it absorbed. The sword's sudden transformation both shocked and intrigued the girls. The Tessaiga, also known as the Sword of Earth, the Tessaiga was created from the fang of the Inu no Teisho. He created it to protect Izayoi, Inuyasha's human mother. It is capable of destroying 100 demons with a single stroke, using the K's no Kizu and the Bakuryuha. In his will, the Inu no Taisho left the Tessaiga to his youngest son, Inuyasha, who was my uncle. Naruto said as he placed Tessaiga back in its sheath. He pulled out another blade, but this one looked like a normal katana. This is the Tenseiga, also called the Sword of Heaven. The Tenseiga was created from the fang of the Inu no Taisho. It is capable of reviving the dead of 100 beings, whether demon or human, with one stroke. Tenseiga cannot cut the living but can cut spirits and the living dead. In his will, the Inu no Taisho left the Tenseiga to his eldest son, Sesshomaru, who was my other uncle, Naruto said before putting that sword back in its sheath. Naruto slowly pulled out the next sword. As it came out of its sheath, the blade gave off a green chakra. It was simple katana, but Naruto knew better than they did. This is Bakuseiga. It was Kushina Uzumaki's signature weapon once she acquired it. The sword is the polar opposite of the Tenseiga, as it has an immensely strong power with the ability to eradicate and decompose any organic material that its blade comes in contact with, nullifying any regenerative capabilities while doing so. The blade itself is the manifestation of Kushina's own poison claws and her true demonic powers and abilities. Kushina was my mother, Naruto said as he stared at the blade for a while before he put the blade back into its sheath. Then Naruto did something none of them expected him to do. He put his hand up before pulling his face mask down, letting the girls see his handsome face. Hinata and Tenten were thinking along the lines of that his whisker marks were adorable, while Karen and Ino were thinking that he looked really hot. The reason I am telling you all this is because I feel like I can trust you and I have never felt like I could trust someone since. Naruto stopped and Karen could have sworn that she saw a tear in his eye. She then walked over to Naruto and pulled him in for a hug. Slowly Naruto wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer. She pulled back after a while and gave him a kiss on the cheek, making Karen blush deeply and Naruto have a slight pink tint to his cheeks. They composed themselves before Naruto continued what he was saying. The reason I told you about my sword's previous owners because I am what they were. And what is that? Hinata asked, getting worried about her roommate. I'm a demon, Naruto said as his eyes turned red and his whisker marks deepened as his voice got demonic at the end, his ears unhedged and twitching on the top of his head. Naruto looked at the four girls waiting for them to run away and tell the villagers. If they do that, then I could destroy the village faster and I would have to play with them, Naruto thought before he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Hinata with a hand on his shoulder as she smiled at him. Why aren't you running away? Because demon or not, you're still you, Naruto-kun, Hinata said as she gave him a hug. She said exactly what Ojichin said as when he was training me. Naruto thought as another tear came from his eye as he remembered his lessons for Inu. I stopped, took a deep breath and controlled his emotions. He turned and saw that it was getting dark, so Ino, Karen and Tenten would have to go home. Well, it's getting dark, so I'll see you guys later, Karen said as she began to walk toward the exit. Before she left, she felt a strong hand grab hers. She turned to see Naruto with a smirk on his face. Oh, how she would like to kiss the smirk off his face, but she couldn't. Why don't you stay for dinner, all of you? Naruto said as he pulled Karen into the kitchen. Tenten and Ino couldn't argue and sat down at the table along with Karen. Hinata asked Naruto where her room was and led her upstairs and pointed to the room right next to hers. She thanked him before he went into his room to change out of his ninja clothes. He put on a pair of pajama bottoms and a muscle shirt before he left his room. As he walked downstairs when he heard a dog barking, when Naruto opened the door, Akamaru came running in and stopped at Naruto's feet. Hey Akamaru, how did you get in? Naruto said as he looked at the wall that served as an entrance. No, the entrance seals are still in place. Maybe he had followed us in when I went home and was quiet the whole time. Oh well, Naruto thought before he picked Akamaru up. Alright Akamaru, let me cook the food and then you and the others can eat, he said before he walked to the kitchen. On his way there he began to hear a very interesting conversation. Namikaze compound, Konohagakure. Naruto leaned against the closed kitchen door after telling Akamaru to be quiet so he wouldn't get caught, but just to make sure they didn't know he was there he put a silence seal around him and Akamaru. With his advanced canine hearing he could hear everything the girls were saying. So what do you all want to do about Naruto? Karen said as she looked at the three girls in front of her. They suddenly looked up with a confused look on their faces. What do you mean? Ino said. Karen sighed before looking at the door to make sure he wasn't there. After checking she said, I mean, what do you all want to do about our crush on him? Outside the door you could see Naruto with a smirk on his face, while inside the girls had a blush on their faces. Ino was the first to speak after the long period of silence. ID. Don. Don't KN. No W. What why? You're talking about, Ino said. Her blush deepened as she was embarrassed that she was stuttering. Ino, don't act like you don't, you're stuttering for Kami's sake and you never stutter, Karen said as she put her hands on her hips. Hinata was simply playing with her fingers as she thought about what she just heard. If the others have a crush on him, then I may lose the chance at being happy with someone I care about. No, I won't lose to them, I will win Naruto-kun's heart. Even if they look more attractive than me, I will show Naruto-kun the real me. Maybe tomorrow I can ask him to go over to Ichiraku's for some ramen, Hinata thought with a smile while Karen and Ino argued about Naruto. So what if I like? It's not like he is going to return the feelings. You never know, he might. What about you, Karen? What about me? How do you feel about him? I feel the same way I felt about Sasuke Tem before I found out he was an asshole. It's not going to be a repeat of what Sasuke did, okay, so try and get close to Naruto-kun please. Anyway, we just made it clear that you and I have a crush on him, but what about Tenten and Hinata? Ino said. She then turned to the two girls and then raised an eyebrow. Tenten looked at the two and saw that had huge grins on their faces. She then looked back at the ground and mumbled, I may have a crush on him. His vast knowledge of weapons and the way he carries himself with such confidence and power, that makes me so attracted to him. Oh, and the way his blue eyes shine in the sunlight, Tenten said before her. Karen and Ino sighed dreamily. Leave it to you, Tenten, to find weapons knowledge hot, but with that one out of the way. Hinata-chan, what do you feel when you're around Naruto-kun? Karen said as she smiled at the former heiress. Hinata picked her head up and she stared at her best friends. A heavy blush formed on her face as she tried to think of a way out of the situation. What? Think about Naruto-kun as, she said before looking around the room. Her blush went away as she realized the room was missing said blonde. What were is Naruto-kun? After she said that, they all paled while looking at the door. Outside, Naruto silently cursed before he dispelled the seal before quietly picking up Akamaru and bolting down the stairs. When the door opened, Karen looked around before sighing in relief. It's okay girls, he wasn't there. Who wasn't there? Naruto said next to her with Akamaru laying on his head sleeping. Karen yelled and jumped backwards into the kitchen, making the other girls stand up and check on her. Naruto-kun, you asshole, why did you do that? I didn't do anything, I simply walked down the hall and you didn't hear me. It's not my fault that you didn't hear me, Naruto said as he picked her up off the floor, but he pulled a little too hard and Karen ended up pressed against his chest, their faces inches apart. Karen blushed at not only the close contact but by the way Naruto was staring in her eyes. He lifted his hand to brush a strand of red hair out of her face as he softly caressed her face. He leaned forward to get closer to her, but instead of going to her lips he placed his lips near her ear before whispering, I will never hurt a pretty girl like you, however Sasuke Tem did, do you understand? Karen shivered before nodding her head. Naruto then smirked before walking to the kitchen and began cooking the food. Karen was still in the same spot with a dreamy look on her face while Tenten, Ino and Hinata were staring at the red head with furious faces. They wanted to be held like that, but they knew that he was probably making sure she was okay. They all sit down in a chair while they waited for their blonde crush to bring the food. Sunagaker. On top of a beige building looking over a vast ocean of sand was 3 teenagers. The 2 of the 3 were female while the last was male. The shortest girl had fair skin and long, spiky, red hair with a striking resemblance to his mother. She has pale blue-green and has no distinctive pupils or eyebrows. She has 2 very notable traits in her appearance. Firstly, she has tanuki-like black eye rings, having them since her birth. Secondly, she carved the kanji, love, I, on the left side of her forehead, having it since a tragic event. Her forelocks are parted from the left side, making the kanji more visible. She was wearing black full-body suit with t-shirt-like sleeves, 3/4 length legs, and an open neck. With this, she wore a white cloth over her right shoulder and the left side of her hips, and a wide leather band system over the left shoulder and right side of her hips. With this leather band, she carried around her gourd that contains sand. She also wrapped her black forehead protector over the band. The tallest boy wore a black, baggy, full-body suit with a red and yellow circle on the front. He also wears a black hood which covered his head completely, and had cat-like ears and his forehead protector on his forehead. On his back was something wrapped in cloth, but there was brown hair, fur poking out of the wrapping. He also wears gloves and carries his puppets on his back. The second girl in the group had teal eyes and blonde hair, which is gathered into 4 outfit consists of a single light purple-colored, off-the-shoulders garment that extended to halfway down her thighs, with a scarlet sash tied around her waist. In addition to incorporating fishnet worn over her shoulders and legs, specifically on her right calf and her left thigh, she also wore her black forehead protector around her neck. On her back was a giant black folding fan. These 3 are Gaia, Kankuro and Tamari, the children of the 4th Kazekage and Suna's Sand siblings. They were some of Suna's best shinobis and will help with the invasion of Konohagakure. Gaia, when did father say we were going to invade Konohagakure? Kankuro asked nicely so he didn't piss his sister off. Gaia continued to stare out in the distance before she turned to face her brother. Kankuro had fear welling up inside of him as his sister's eyes stared into his. Kankuro could see the bloodlust in them and he didn't like that they were being aimed at him. Tamari was sitting on the roof not caring what happened to Kankuro because of a prank he did to her earlier. Kankuro, that man is not my father. My father wouldn't send shinobis to try to kill me or use me as a weapon. That man is the Kazekage, he is my leader, nothing more nothing less, and if you ever refer him as my father again I will kill you without any remorse, understand? Gaia said in a monotone voice as sand seeped out of her gourd and tightened around Kankuro's throat. Kankuro nodded before the sand retracted from his throat and went inside Gaia's gourd. Kankuro began to cough and tried to get his breathing back to normal. Tamari smirked at her brother's misfortune before standing up and facing Gaia. Gaia, when do we invade Konohagakure? The Kazekage never told us, Tamari said as she pointed her and then a coughing Kankuro. Gaia sighed before looking up at the moon. I heard one of the guards say that we are to invade Konohagakure during the Chunin exams, she said in the same monotone voice before feeling sleepy. She quickly shook her head trying to brush the sleepy feeling away. When that didn't work she slapped herself, thus getting rid of the sleepy feeling. Tamari looked worriedly at her sister. You should ask his Chio to fix your seal so you can get some sleep, Tamari said as she placed her hand on Gaia's shoulder. Gaia tensed at the sudden sign of affection, but then she composed herself and brushed Tamari's hand off her. I know they don't find out until the Gaia retrieve mission, but the way I wanted this story to go needed them to know who sealed Shukaku inside of Gaia. I don't want to talk that old hag, beside this is the only way I can talk to mother, Gaia said as the venom she had at the beginning of speaking lessened as she mentioned their mother. Tamari nodded understanding just as Kankuro finally got his breathing under control. He stood away from Gaia to lessen the chance of provoking her. She would never do that to Tamari though. Gaia and Tamari have a closer bond than all 3 of us do, Kankuro thought as he glared at his youngest sibling. What do you think Naruto-kun is doing right now, sister? Tamari said as a slight blush came on her face at the thought of their fiancé. Gaia sighed dreamily at the thought of the blonde before she said, I don't know, but what I do know is that he's going to get an earful for not visiting. I mean, it's been 2 years. I'm beginning to think that he's up and forgotten about us. Konkuro stared at his two sisters in shock. This was the first he heard of them have a fiancé, and this was the first time that he had ever seen Gaia and Tamari act so girly. After sitting in silence for a couple more minutes, Gaia stood up. Let's go, Gaia said as she disappeared in a swarm of sand. Tamari and Konkuro nodded before they disappeared in a swirl of wind. They didn't know that after the invasion their lives were going to change drastically. Konohagakure, Namikaze compound. After Naruto finished cooking, he made multiple shadow clones to carry it. The girls were surprised at the amount of food that was set on the table: 10 steaks, 5 bowls of dumplings, 20 bowls of ramen, 4 pitchers of water, 3 plates of egg rolls, 2 cakes and 10 bowls of ice cream. Before Naruto sat down, he grabbed a steak and gave it to Akamaru. The wolf pup then barked in happiness before digging in, as did Naruto. He placed 3 steaks and 15 dumplings on his plate, then grabbed 10 bowls of ramen before pouring water into a large glass cup. As he was about to dig in, he noticed that the girls were staring at him in awe and slight disgust. Karen was the first to speak up. Naruto-kun, are you really going to eat all that food? She asked. He simply nodded before explaining why. There are 2 reasons why I eat so much. 1, because I have a large appetite, and 2, whatever I eat give me more energy so I can train for longer time periods. The girls nodded before wondering how much chakra does he have if he needs this much food to supply energy for it. Hinata was the first one of the 4 to grab a bowl of ramen, then the others followed. They were very surprised that the food tasted good. They would have never thought an enigma like Naruto would be such an amazing cook. Naruto-kun, this food is amazing. Where did you learn to cook like this? Ten said as she continued to eat dumpling after dumpling. Ino and Hinata nodded their heads as their mouths are full of ramen. They all enjoyed the food and was soon finished, all but Karen. Naruto noticed this and he gave her a concerned look that didn't go unnoticed by the redhead. Karen leaned over to Naruto and told him that she would like to speak outside. Naruto nodded before he got up, excused himself and Karen, and walked out the kitchen door, Karen and Akamaru following behind. Once outside, Naruto led them to a small pond that was located in front of the compound. What did you want to talk about, Karen-chan? Naruto said as he sat on the grass. Karen sat next to him while playing with Akamaru's fur. She sighed before turning to Naruto. Naruto, what would you say if I said that you weren't the only Uzumaki alive? Karen said as she continued to play with the wolf pup's fur, making Akamaru's tail wag. Naruto looked at her as if unimpressed. If you are saying that you're an Uzumaki, then I already know. How? It's simple, really. Only Uzumakis have red hair and a temper like the one you unleashed on me in the hallway. That was your fault, Baka. See, there's that famous Uzumaki temper, Naruto said before he picked up Akamaru, placed him on his head. Where do you all live at? Naruto said. Karen was too busy staring at his face that was illuminated in the moonlight to hear what he said. What? I said, where do you guys live at? Why do you want to know? Because I am taking you all somewhere tomorrow and I want to know where to pick you up at. Well, I live with my adopted sister Anko Mitarashi. Hinata is living at the Hyuga compound. Ten lives with Yugao and Ino lives at the Yamanaka compound. Thank you for the information, but Hinata lives with me, not at the Hyuga compound. But why? She is the heiress of her clan, Karen said, confused at the new information. Naruto then realized that Hinata never told them that she was no longer the heiress of her clan, so to make up an excuse he picked up Akamaru and said, well, I have to take this little pup back to his owner, after I make sure that you girls get home okay. With that he began to walk back inside, Karen following behind him. After dinner, Naruto, Karen, Hinata, Ten, Ino and Akamaru journeyed to the homes of the 3 girls, it smoothly for the most part. Ino's dad was angry that his daughter was out with Naruto but held his tongue in front of his daughter. To make the situation harder for Inoichi to control himself, Naruto gave her a kiss on the cheek, making said girl have a very heavy blush. Tenten accompanied Naruto, Hinata and Karen after Tenten saw that Yugao was not home. So when Naruto knocked on Karen and Anko's door, Tenten was surprised to see that not only Yugao was there but Kurenai as well, and they were all sporting matching bandages on their necks. Yugao-chan, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be home? Tenten said. Yugao turned and looked at the two girls but noticed someone behind them. Tenten-chan, I was just about to go home, but who is the blonde behind you? Yugao said. Tenten and Karen turned to Naruto and moved to the side so the three girls could see him. As soon as the three ice queens saw Naruto, they drew their kunai, then threw them at Naruto at breakneck speeds. Naruto jumped back and flipped into the street to avoid the kunai. Anko rushed at Naruto with her fist back, then she threw a barrage of punches that Naruto dodges without any problem. He then grabbed Anko's arm mid-punch and hit her in the stomach with an open palm strike. She flew through the air only to be caught by Kurenai. At that moment, Yugao rushed at Naruto and engaged him in an advanced taijutsu battle. Every punch and kick Yugao sent Naruto's way, he would easily dodge or block it. Karen, Tenten, and Hinata were shouting for them to stop. They were about to join in to stop them but was stopped as they fell on the ground asleep. Behind them was Kurenai with her hands coming to her sides after casting the genjutsu on the girls. Akamaru ran in front of the knocked out girls and growled at Kurenai before he began to bark at said red-eyed woman. The barking got Naruto's attention as he turned his head to see the unconscious bodies of his friends. Under his shades, Naruto's eyes turned red in anger and he grabbed Yugao's arm, stopping her from punching him with that arm. She tried to yank her arm out of his grasp but it was futile. He then tightened his fist before slamming it in her gut, sending her through the open door of Anko and Karen's apartment. Anko, who had just recovered, had to duck to avoid being hit by the rapidly moving body of Yugao. Hearing a crash from inside her house, she glared at Naruto before grabbing a kunai. Naruto, who left all his swords at home, picked up a kunai off the ground before getting back into a fighting position. You don't want to do this, Naruto said as he didn't want to hurt the girls, but if push comes to shove he would. Anko snickered at his comment before she rushed at him. Naruto sighed and readied himself. When she got close enough, Naruto ducked and swept her legs from under her, making her drop the kunai in her hands and land on her back. Naruto twisted before flipping in the air so he could land on top of her. Anko looked up to see Naruto above her with a kunai at her neck. She looked past his and a smirk grew on her face. Kurenai appeared behind him with her own kunai in her hands, pointing at Naruto's back. Naruto smirked as well before pulling his mask up and disappearing in a red flash, surprising Anko and Kurenai. They looked all over before suddenly they felt a sharp pain on their sides. Looking down, they saw two Narutos with their fists stretched out, striking them in the ribs. Naruto then disappeared again before the girls were hit over and over again. When Naruto stopped his attack, the girls woke up as Anko and Kurenai fell to the floor. They were about to rush at Naruto to see if he was alright, but Yugao jumped out of the house with her katana drawn. She swiped at Naruto multiple times but none of her swipes connected to her target. She was breathing heavily as she tried very hard her very best to hit him, but to her surprise he wasn't sweating. Not even a change in his breathing pattern. This enraged her that her skills were being dodged so easily, so was about to swipe one last time but was stopped when her hand was grabbed. Yugao turned to see Tenten and Hinata holding her arm in place. Yugao looked at Anko and Kurenai to see Karen helping them with her limited knowledge of medical jutsu. Why are you stopping me? Yugao asked when she finally put her arm down. Tenten and Hinata looked at her before looking at the blonde Jenny that was standing in front of them. A blush crept up on their face as they tried to explain but couldn't, at least not in front of Naruto. You see, Hinata began. We stopped you. Tenten continued. Because Naruto is. Hinata and Tenten said. Karen stood next to them after helping Anko and Kurenai and finished the sentence for them. Naru-kun. Yugao sighed at the girls before glaring at the blonde Jenny. Okay, we will try and not kill each other, Yugao said. You wish you three were strong enough to kill me. I didn't even break a sweat, Naruto said, making Yugao, Anko, Kurenai, Karen, Ten and Hinata to scream. What? Naruto looked at them confused before he rolled his eyes, and he thought girls are so confusing. 1 minute they're helping you and the next they are trying to kill you. After everyone calmed down, apologizes were shared. Naruto bind the girls farewell and Naruto followed Akamaru as the wolf pup lead him home. To Naruto's surprise and amazement, Akamaru lead him to the Namikaze compound instead of the Inuzuka compound. Looking down at the wolf, Naruto said, "Do you want to stay with me, boy, instead, Kiba?" Akamaru's response was him running around Naruto barking happily. Okay, then let's go home, Naruto said as he walked through the gate with Akamaru on his head, starting a new bond between the two.